How's it going, everybody? Adam here from Coding Basics, and welcome to tutorial number 5 in my Programming Leap Motion with Java series. If you're new to this series, I'd go back to the first videos and watch them through to see how we get all of this code. It is pretty much all important. So, yeah, make sure you have all the code, except for I'm going to comment out the code we did in the last video about getting hand data, because we don't need it for this video. And now, for this video, we are going to be going over getting finger data. So we've done getting the frame data, we've done getting hand data, now we're doing getting finger data, and that also includes getting some bone data, but I'm just going to include that with all the finger data. So, for this one, once again, we're going to do a for loop. So for finger, and we're going to call this finger. Finger is an object part of the Leap Motion library, and it's going to come out just like with our hand tutorial. It's going to come from the frame, and we're going to call the fingers method, which returns a finger list, a special list part of the Leap Motion library. Now in here is where we're going to print out data pertaining to each finger. I'm just going to look at my notes quickly. Alright, so for that, system dot out dot print line. I'm printing out to give you guys a visual display, but you can of course save this stuff in variables to use elsewhere in your program. I'm just printing it so you can see what actually gets returned. So first thing we need to do is return a finger type. So for that, we're going to print out finger type. And to get the finger type, you just got to call the finger object and the type method, and it returns the type of finger. Next thing is the finger ID. So like the hand, each finger has its own unique ID. So for that, ID, and we're going to print out finger dot and call the ID method. Like I mentioned in all the other tutorials, ID is a unique number for that finger, and like the hand one, every time you took your hand off the sensor, when you put it back, it had a different ID. So the ID is always changing. It's not going to be the same every time you run your program. Remember that. And the other thing to realize for this, for these two tutorials, every frame. So I said in the frame tutorial that the Leap Motion provides about 300 frames per second. So 300 times per second, this was getting printed out. For this one, it depended on how many hands you had in your over the Leap Motion. So if you had one hand, it would print it out 300 times per second. If you had two hands, then it would be 600 times per second. Well, just realize here, each hand has 5 fingers, so it is going to be exponentially more printing. So just thought I'd mention that. Next thing is the length of the finger. So finger length. And for that, all you got to do is print out finger dot length. Alright, sorry for that pause there. I was pretty sure that the length was in millimeters, but I wanted to check before I told you that. But I can confirm that the number that gets returned is a floating point, as you can see right here. So it's a floating point, and the number represents the length of your finger in millimeters. So I just wanted to double check that before I gave you wrong information. And next thing is going to be the width of the finger, also in millimeters. So finger width, and we will get that from calling the width method from the finger object. Alright, now I'm just going to put in brackets here millimeters. Okay, and let's run this now. So run. Right now, nothing's showing up because I haven't put a hand over the motion sensor. I'm going to put my hand over now. And you can, I'm going to stop it now. You can see what happened. So if you look at this, first thing was the ID. So it starts with your thumb, goes to your index finger, your middle finger, your ring finger, and pinky. So it almost goes in order from left to right, the hand type. Another thing you'll notice is the length in millimeters. But when it looks at ID, so in this frame, so just remember 5 fingers per frame. So in this frame, 420 was the index for my thumb. 1420, sorry. And when you look at this frame, same thing. 1420 is the index for my thumb. I just want to put spaces between these just so it's a little bit more readable. Okay. Now I'm going to run this again. And you'll notice we have different sets of IDs. Now I'm not going to stop the program this time. I just simply removed my hand from the motion sensor. Now when I put it back, you'll notice complete sets of different IDs again. So it keeps the same ID while the hand is over the motion sensor. But every time you take it off and put it on, or every time you run the program again, you're going to need a different ID. So just keep that in mind. And you'll notice again the length, width, all that is working perfectly fine. Well, I don't know how accurate it is. I'm not going to measure my finger, but it looks close enough to me. Next thing is going over bones. So one thing in this current version of the library that I'm using is skeletal tracking. So it's focusing a lot more on fingers and bones and whatnot. So here we go. For this one, it's part of the fingers. So that's why I'm including it in this video. So and we're going to create a bone, so bone.type to be exact, so bone.type, and we're going to call it bone type, and we are going to call get these from a list which is in bone.type.values. Alright, so these are where we're going to get our bone type information. And for each one, we're going to create a new bone. So bone, we're going to call it bone, and set it equal to finger dot bone, and then we're going to pass in here one of these bone type values. So this isn't actually calling the bones. Here we're creating the bone. All this is doing is getting a list of bone type values. So kind of like how we have our pinky ID and our thumb, index, middle, ring, all that. Okay. So what we're going to do is pass in here bone type. Alright, and now we're going to print out some information for each bone. So system dot out dot print line. Just want to see how long the video is right now. Okay, 8 minutes. Just wanted to make sure I'm not going too long. And then in here, we're first going to type in bone, or display the bone type. Bone type. And we get that by taking our bone object and calling the type method, which returns a bone type. Okay, next thing is the start of the bone. So start, I gotta put that in the quotation marks. So start, and we get that by calling bone dot previous joint. That's going to get to the start of our new bone. Okay, and next is going to be the end. So end, and if we use the previous joint to get next, or the previous joint to get the start, you can imagine what we're going to use to get the end, which is going to be the next joint. So bone dot next joint. All right, and then final thing is the direction. Direction. And we're going to get that from the bone.direction method, which is going to return a vector. So just to explain maybe a little bit better, the start is, even though it says previous joint, so what the start is, it's the vector that is set to the position at the base of your finger. So just think about it as the, a position of where the base of your finger is. The end, even though it says next joint, it's not really a joint, it's just the tip of your finger. So the vector that is where the tip of your finger is. And then direction is a vector, which it's like the normal vector. So like I explained in the hand video, it's like the normal vector, but from the base of your finger to the tip of your finger. So the direction of your finger. So now let's run this. Alright, so that's enough information. What you'll see here is for each finger, it will, for each finger it has its own different types of bones. So this is your pinky finger, and it divides your pinky finger into the different parts of bones that make it up. So I guess it kind of is like a joint. I guess I said it wasn't really like a joint, but it is like a joint. Where the end of this bone is and where the next bone starts. So that is what it's keeping track of, which is pretty amazing that it can detect all of that. Alright. And yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about in this video. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure to leave a comment on the video, like the video, and subscribe. Next video will be tools, so going over getting data from tools, and then we'll finish off this entire series by going over gestures. So once again, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next tutorial.